So verse 12, Srila Gurudev gives a very sweet commentary. The translation of verse 12 is Raghunath Das Goswami is praying, when will Srimati Radhika bestow her mercy upon me, and she will cure the deafness, which is the inability to hear the sweet jingling of her ankle bells as she is performing pastimes with Krishna. So he's praying like that to Srimati Radhika, please cure my deafness. So then Gurudev tells a very sweet pastime. He said, Raghunath was sitting on the bank of Radha Kund. He had just prayed with the previous verse. Swapne bikim sumukite charanam bujata rajat paraga patavasa vibhushanena shobham paramatitaram atithota mangam brad bhavishyati karama masartanama. He had prayed with this verse. And he had seen himself in that pastime where Radhika placed her parag on his forehead. And then that scene vanished. And then he began to weep on the bank of Radha Kund. And continue, while he was writing these verses would be written when some inspiration came in his heart, some spurti. And then again he would be chanting or calling out the names of Srimati Radharani, like we hear, Kotai Go Premamoy. This is about Raghunath Das Goswami. So he was always chanting Radhe Radhe. For him, the Mahamantra is Radhe Radhe. On that stage of his advancement, this is what Gorkishwaras Babaji Maharaj sings, Kotai Go Premamoy Radhe Radhe. This song is all talking about how and where he's saying Radhe Radhe. Like we sing, Ek bar deke talavane, abarda ke tamalvane, Radhe Radhe. So sometimes in Talvan, sometimes in Tamalvan, sometimes Radha Kund, Sham Kund, Govardhan, Varshana, everywhere, but his mantra is only Radhe Radhe. So after this vision disappeared, then again he was chanting Radhe Radhe. So remember, he had that vision where he was serving and Radhika placed her parag on his forehead. And then the scene vanished. So now he is chanting and weeping and praying Radhe Radhe. So Gurudev describes at that moment, he began to hear the sounds of many swans swimming in Radha Kund. And while they were swimming, they were singing their song. And he said the song of swans has a very beautiful sound which is similar to that of the jingling of ankle bells, mixed with the sounds of other birds and the rippling of the water. So it said he heard this sound which reminded him of the sound of ankle bells. And as soon as he heard that, it said that his avesh or absorption entered again into Braj Leela. And this is showing the state of Swarup Siddhi, that he is there as a sadhaka practitioner, chanting and praying, and then when he has a spurti of the Leela, immediately he sees himself in the Leela also. So it said, as he heard this sound of the swan song, which was like the ankle bells, then his consciousness immediately entered into Braj Leela, and he was completely absorbed in that. This is a real spurti. Spurti means you don't only see it and then you recognize that you're in this body and you're seeing the vision. Spurti means you're completely inside that pastime. Even though you're in this body, the body is there just like a structure and your consciousness is in the pastime. So his consciousness completely went into Krishna Leela and he began to see the scene of Ras Leela. So he said at that time Raghunath saw that Krishna was in the midst of millions and millions of gopis, Satakoti Gopi. And all the gopis and Krishna were beautifully dancing. And so all the gopis were dancing and they all have these ankle bells. But specifically he heard the sound of Srimati Radhika's ankle bells because the manjaris are always attuned to Srimati Radhika. So at that time he was hearing the sound of Srimati Radhika's dancing with Krishna. And Srimati Radhika was so expertly dancing that the dancing of Srimati Radhika made a very special beat with the ankle bells. And it said that this sound of Srimati Radhika's ankle bells was in harmony with the sound of Krishna playing the flute. So as they were dancing, Krishna was also playing on his vangsi, and the sound of the murali mixed with the sound of the ankle bells was creating a beautiful symphony in Braj. Along with that, all the manjaris and gopis are different. There's also different gopis who are playing on different instruments like the veena, different drums, the kachapi. So we can imagine the symphony, but Raghunath was only focused on the sound of Radhika's ankle bells in this dance. And so we can imagine the scene. all the millions of gopis are dancing, Sri Krishna is dancing, he's playing on the flute. It's described that when they're in the Rasa dance, then it's like a transcendental competition. And the competition is only who can expand the pleasure of the other party more. So Krishna is trying to expand the pleasure of the gopis, and the gopis are trying to increase the pleasure of Krishna. And this is the competition. And in this way, even though the gopis, it said the gopis don't have even a tiniest scent of selfishness. They don't want any happiness for themselves. But at the same time, they're experiencing happiness millions and millions of times greater than we can even conceive of. Even more than Krishna. Because Krishna himself, who is the personification of Rasa, Rasu Vaisa, he himself is endeavoring to satisfy and enhance the happiness of the gopis. So how can they not be happy? Even though they're not interested in their own happiness, Krishna himself is engaging in increasing their happiness. God himself. So their ananda is boundless at that time. It said, simply hearing the sound of Krishna's flute, at that time of the Rasa Lila, all the different entities in Braj become stunned. Not even only the Brajbasis, but even the demigods witnessing from their airplanes become stunned and unconscious. And the wives of the demigods all fall senseless in their husbands' laps out of transcendental love for Krishna. Not only that, but the Jamuna begins to, instead of flowing in a straight line, the Jamuna begins to go in whirlpools and offer up her lotuses to the banks to Krishna. And the deer become motionless and drink the sound of Krishna's flute. The cows who are chewing grass stop chewing grass, and the grass is just sitting there in their mouth. And their ears are drinking the nectar of Krishna's flute. The calves who are drinking the milk from the udders of their mothers, their mouths remain motionless on the udders of their cows, and they're simply drinking the sound of Krishna's flute. All the deers and the stags come to Sri Krishna and listen. All the peacocks and birds sit motionless in the trees. Generally, we see bees are very restless and always going from one flower to another and flapping their wings very quickly. But hearing the sound of Krishna's flute, it said everyone becomes stunned in ecstasy. And it said those things which are normally achal, which means motionless, start to move. So the trees which are motionless begin to drip with honey in ecstasy. And the bees and birds who are always moving very quickly become stunned and sit wherever they were when Krishna started playing the flute. The birds are sitting on the branches of the trees. The bees are sitting on the petals of flowers. And they're all drinking the sound of Krishna's flute. At that time, everyone is intoxicated with this nectar. But Gurudev said, even more charming and more beautiful and more powerful than the sound of Krishna's flute is Srimati Radhika's ankle bells. The sound of the jingling of Srimati Radhika's ankle bells is more wonderful than the sound of Krishna's flute. That's why Raghunath is saying, when will you cure my deafness? By the sound of your ankle bells. He's not saying, when will I hear the sound of Krishna's flute? When will I hear the sound of Srimati Radhika's ankle bells? And then Gurudev describes, Krishna is Madan Mohan. Krishna attracts the whole universe. But Radhika is Madan Mohan Mohini. She attracts Krishna himself. So with the sound of Krishna's flute, everyone is attracted. Krishna himself is all attractive. But Krishna himself is overpowered by the love of Srimati Radhika, and simply hearing her ankle bells, he runs to find her. That if Krishna is present anywhere in Braj, and Srimati Radhika starts walking and the sound of her ankle bells comes to Krishna, then Krishna cannot stay where he is present. He will find some excuse and he'll have to run to find Srimati Radhika. This is the power of her ankle bells. So in this time, Radha, Krishna and the gopis are dancing very expertly. Radha and Krishna are dancing in the middle. Prabhuji described in Ras Panchadhyay twice. For like 1 month he described just the Rasa dance. And so it's a very beautiful description of all the different types of dances and poses, the different rags they sing. The gopis will sing in one way, and then Krishna will applause them, and Krishna will repeat, and they will go up one rag after another. Finally, the gopis will sing in such a way that Krishna cannot repeat. And Krishna says, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Excellent. So in this meantime, as Radhika is dancing, she begins to dance so swiftly and expertly that her ankle bell clasp opens and her ankle bell flies off her foot. We see in Mahaprabhu Leela, this also happens with Abhinam Thakur, or this one devotee who has very thick, big ankle bells. So he also tells this. So as Radhika is dancing very quickly, the ankle bell comes off. And as soon as her ankle bell comes off, everything stops. Krishna stops playing the flute. All the gopis stop dancing. Because Radhika stopped, people think Krishna is everything. But actually without Radhika, there's no Ras. As soon as Radhika leaves the Ras, then the Ras is finished. Even though there are millions of gopis, they cannot attract Krishna. Even though there's tens of millions of, each gopi is more beautiful than any damsel of heaven or any goddess of fortune. And yet, as soon as Radhika stops dancing, then the Ras Leela stops. And so then Radhika looks with this sidelong glance at Rati Manjari, who is also known as Tulsi Manjari. She looks with her sidelong glance, indicating, you should go and collect my ankle bell and put it back on my ankle. So Rati Manjari, in his Avesh there, immediately goes to fetch that. And right as he's about to grab the ankle bell, right as he's about to put his hand on it, the Spurti disappears. And then Raghunath immediately comes back into his Avesh absorption as the sadhaka. And you can imagine, what would you do? If you were there, just about to give Radharani her ankle bell, and then everything vanishes, and here you are again as a sadhaka. Then Raghunath Das Goswami again began to weep and weep, and then he wrote this verse, starting Amritabdi, Rasa Prayas, that when you are in the Rasa dance, when will you cure my deafness by giving me the sound of that ankle bell? So he's saying, why is he saying he is deaf? Because just a moment before he was hearing the sound of her ankle bells, and now he's not able to hear it. So he says, this is material, this is like some kind of deafness. So he's saying the only way I can be cured of this is by you giving the nectar of that sound of your dancing ankle bells, on the ankle bells on your dancing lotus feet. So Raghunath prays like that. This is verse 12. We can memorize that verse now. Okay?